Hi, everybody. So I'm actually quite sure that a lot of you guys actually want to be future entrepreneurs, right? But at the same time, there are plenty of us also asking ourselves, what if I failed? So I'm also a first-time entrepreneur, and this is my very first startup. And I ask myself this question every single day. What I'm going to share with you guys today, is a certain mental framework of learn, unlearn, and relearn that I have adopted so far throughout the process of running the company. So by no means this framework will help me achieve everything that I want, but it is a framework that have actually helped me get closer to my goals so far. So I'm hoping it will do the same for you today. So I come from your typical brown family. Like my mom is seriously old school. Extremely annoying. But she cooks and feeds us quite well. She's also quite lovely. Also when she cooks for the family today, and if we do not consume everything today, she is going to incorporate today's meal into something new tomorrow. So as to not have wastage basically. She even reuses a lot of packaging materials, plenty of times, up until there's certain wear and tear before she finally discards it. So my dad, on the other hand, was the total opposite. He was extremely strict. And, I had curfew still. I think I was like 22 years old, which was quite old. Also when I graduated from my O levels, when I was 16, the congrats that I got from my dad was this basically. So he came back home from work and he just told me, so I'm a big boy right now. And, from the next day onwards, I will have to start funding for myself. So he's not going to give me a single cent basically. So from 17 onwards, 17 years old onwards, I started doing part-time jobs to survive in school thereafter. Essentially, I am a product of my own environment, and my upbringing was a huge part of shaping the whole upcycle and maximizing my resources sort of mentality that I adopted when starting CRUST Group. So when I got the idea, I sat my parents down. I brought them out for lunch, and then the first question that my mom asked was when she looked at the table and she saw there was only 3 chairs. And she looked at me and she was like, isn't there a 4th chair? So basically, she expected that I was going to introduce her to some girl, but apparently it was a very disappointing day for her. So now back to how I started CRUST Group. I've always wanted to start a value-based company, whereby we put value and profit hand in hand. At the same time, I'm also a huge fan of beer and have been home brewing for a while then. So my eureka moment actually came when I was researching like the origins of beer. Not so much when, I first started home brewing, but it came years after, where I came across quite a number of articles stating that the preservation of bread was one of the oldest form of making beer. So this was sometime in August 2018, so that sparked the whole interest. It was the start of my learning process. So I then started making bread beer. I got a few friends to come on board. We did a couple of batches, and the first 2 was so bad. We basically threw away like 60 liter worth of beer in total then. And, so I was still quite adamant, about making it work. So I traveled to California in January 2019, for about a month and a half to learn from various breweries there, learn as much as I could, came back to Singapore after, did a couple more batches at home, with bread, with much better success rate. A couple of months after that, CRUST Group was born, with the mission to maximize our resources and minimize food waste through beer. So the underlying problem that we are trying to help or assist in, there is approximately 1.3 billion tons of food waste globally yearly. And as we dive deeper into our research of food waste worldwide and research on like the various different companies who are helping to minimize food waste, we found one thing in common, and that was that plenty of these companies with relevant solutions, they had relevant solutions, but for lack of better word, they are extremely boring solutions. So they were mostly functioning in the background and more B2B than B2C. We felt that ultimately, if larger consumers do not understand the critical nature of food waste and how it impacts climate change, then we will never be able to solve the bigger problem of food waste. So from a business perspective, it also made perfect sense for us back then, right? Why should I be paying more for my raw materials to produce my products when there's plenty of unsold and unused food that I could then use as a replacement. And in fact, by doing so, that might even bring my costs down. So, we felt consumers needed to be educated, on the risk of climate change, and we thought, we could help provide that solution. And we started focusing a lot on the branding side of CRUST, and like what better way to start a conversation revolving around food waste, than having a couple of beers made from food waste. So, we started the conversation going when we launched in Singapore in September 2019. So the idea was to start with small steps to build CRUST. Basically a fun idea of using beer to start the conversation going, and very much like the topic of this TEDx talk, big questions and small answers. So as we continued progress in Singapore, this was just before COVID, we realized that building an ecosystem takes small efforts from many different stakeholders. One company cannot do as much and cannot have as much impact. And it's definitely not easy, but going into the weeds is the way we can shake things up and at the same time show a better way of producing things. So we do believe that the future of food should be more collaborative and less competitive, basically. So we started collaborating with a lot of F&B businesses, whereby we will come in as their R&D partner, and we will upcycle their food waste and create co-branded beers for them. But before that could take off, COVID happened. And things changed drastically, both in terms of consumer behaviors and businesses who were pretty much in survival mode, and most would not be too keen on new ideas. So we had to unlearn a lot of things that we knew from before, and relearn new methods and processes in order for us to survive now as a company. So this was when we set up our own e-commerce platform, in order to sell online, through, though at that point, there was only 2 people in the company, so me and my COO, Ben, who's a dear friend of mine, and we only had 1 vehicle, and we knew that we won't be able to fulfill all our orders on time, but we had to at least try. During the whole process, there was one instances where we had 18 deliveries a day, and I think it took us like 11.5 hours to actually complete everything. So it was a lot of painful times, but we managed to recover. And during that process, when engaging with our customers through our deliveries and, other people through Zoom meetings, we were asked plenty of times, why just bread and why just beer? So why not think a little bit bigger and expand your portfolio and therefore expand your impact? So this big question sparked us a little bit, and then we realized that the company is just scratching the surface. And also there's so much more that we could do to shift our production method. We then decided to pivot the company from a brewing company into a food tech company, therefore expanding our portfolio. And this happened sometime in May 2020 onwards. And that was also the start of some of the most difficult times I've had, running the company. I was, a very confident CEO of a brewing company, but to be the CEO of a food tech company was a whole new different ballgame altogether. So it was a very steep learning curve, but at the end of the day, it was also the most fulfilling time I've had within the company. So the amount of unlearning and relearning I had to do during this period was also huge. It was a lot of new stuff that we had to go and learn. So we then hired a couple of food science interns. We started R&D on non-alcohol beverages, but we also wanted our non-alcohol beverages to be a functional beverage, so kind of like a beverage that kills 2 birds with 1 stone, and then of course definitely still using upcycled ingredients as a substitute for most of our raw materials, but the non-alcohol beverage will be where we will be fighting mostly fruit and vegetable wastage. So aside from our R&D for the non-alcohol beverages, for the beer side, our cost price was still quite high for the beer side, due to the fact that we contract manufacture, because we don't have our own facility. We also had additional delivery points compared to most breweries or FMCG companies, because we need to collect additional surplus ingredients from elsewhere. So we basically have more moving parts in what we do. So initially we focused a lot on the branding and the narrative of sustainability in general, right, in order to justify our higher price to the market. And we found out the hard way that everything still comes down to price. At the end of the day, right, I do not want to appeal to the people who already understand what I'm doing. I want to be able to appeal to the people who don't really care about what I'm doing, and everything then boils down to price. So this was another instance of us, unlearning and relearning within the company. We knew that we had to focus, on the production costs as much as our sales and branding. So production cost plays a huge part, because the act of kindness, or what we term as sustainability these days, can only get you so far. And ultimately, if we can't bring our costs down, or go mainstream in general, we will always continue to produce at a smaller scale like we currently do, and we will always rely on the narrative of sustainability, right? To justify our higher cost, and we will never be able to tackle the bigger problem in terms of food waste and loss. So we knew we needed to show the market that there are better ways of producing beverages, and we are adamant about taking that lead right now. So at the end of the day, that trendy term sustainability, can only bring you so far. The idea is to not make sustainability into a trend, but into a norm instead. And only with that focus in mind, right, we can then create real solutions and have a real shift in how we produce. So in all this, our mental framework of learn, unlearn, and relearn was implemented. Technology and everything around us is moving increasingly faster than before. And at the end of the day, we can't rely on formal education to bring us forward, and improve the future for future. Formal education is a good guide, but it should not be depended upon. We need to be able to unlearn and relearn quickly, and adapt accordingly as we grow as well. So learning is part of the process, and if we don't change our ways, we are always going to be stuck in the past, and we will never evolve. And within CRUST, we would have remained just a brewing company, with very little impact if not for this framework that we implemented. Right now, from next month onwards, we will already have brought our costs down by 15%. And at the same time, we will be launching, our line of non-alcohol beverages branded as Crop. And this was only possible, as we are constantly evolving. At the end of the day, the smaller your reality, the more convinced you are that you know everything. I hope what I shared today, might prove useful to someone else in the future. That is all I have for you today. Thank you.